first thing you do, you take a drink, and after they've had their first one, they start to get warm. Now, they wipe their face off, and when they put their handkerchiefs back, it's never in the same position, you see. Now, the next, after a couple of more drinks, they begin to itch.
In October 2024, a quiet upload on Tubi drew more than 2 million viewers in days. The footage wasn't new, yet almost no one had ever seen it. These were the unaired sections of Red Skelton's final specials, tapes stored for more than 40 years because he spoke without characters, without comedy, and without distance. He talked about losses he never addressed publicly, choices he wished he had handled differently, and parts of his career he believed people misunderstood. The question was why this material, once considered too personal for broadcast, emerged now. To understand that choice, the only place to begin is with the life that shaped the man viewers thought they already knew. Childhood. Red Skelton was born on July 18, 1913, in a small house in Vincennes, Indiana. His father, Joe Skelton, had worked as a circus clown before his death from heart failure 2 months earlier. Because of that loss, Red grew up without a model for stability, and his mother was left to raise 4 sons on limited income. Their small general store failed, and the family relied on neighbors for food, clothes, and temporary work. These early shortages shaped Red's understanding of effort and survival. Schooling came in irregular stretches because his days were filled with labor. He sold newspapers on street corners for 3 cents, carried ice blocks, cleaned laundry shops, and walked long distances to bring home a few coins. Each job gave him a basics understanding of how adults coped with hardship during the 1910s and early 1920s. His humor developed in these spaces not as performance, but as a tool to ease tension. When people responded to his jokes, he recognized that laughter created brief relief from the weight everyone carried. At age 10, he joined Doc R.J. Lewis's traveling medicine show for $10 a week. He slept in wagons and barns, and he sent his earnings home. The work was modest, selling tonics, doing small stunts, repeating simple routines. But it gave him structure, which he had lacked. A fall from the stage during one show produced unexpected laughter from the crowd. Instead of discouraging him, the moment taught him that mistakes could be repurposed. For 4 years, he learned pantomime, juggling, accents, and the basics of reading a room. Skelton never knew his father, but stories from older performers helped him imagine the man. This connection mattered because it gave direction to his ambitions. Every circus tent reminded him of someone he could not remember. He later said that comedy became a way to fill that absence. By 15, he left school entirely. He hitchhiked to Chicago with $1.35 and accepted any job that allowed him to perform. The shift from local work to touring circuits was driven by necessity. The family had little, and Red wanted to support himself without adding pressure at home. During the Great Depression, he worked wherever there was an audience: circuses, dance marathons, burlesque theaters, and sidewalks. At 16, he joined the Hagen-Beck-Wallace Circus, the same one his father had served. The environment was physically demanding, but it allowed him to expand the skills he had learned in the medicine shows. He then performed with a silent vaudeville act called the Merry Mutes, earning $5 a week. Silence became central to his approach. With limited dialogue allowed, he relied on facial expression, timing, and physical cues. These tools later shaped his radio and television characters. By 1931, he began speaking roles in a partnership with Bud Jones. Their impressions and sketches brought in $75 a week, which was significant during the Depression. When the act ended because of Jones's dishonesty, it disrupted both his income and his sense of stability. That setback, however, led to a new connection. Red met Edna Stillwell, an usher with a talent for writing and structuring comedy. Their partnership marked the beginning of the material that eventually carried him to radio. This period established the pattern that followed him through life. Economic pressure led to continuous work. Setbacks pushed him into new environments, and every stage of survival produced skills he would later rely on. The rise. Red entered radio in 1937 after years of small stage work. His early sketches with Edna Stillwell had already shown that he understood how timing worked, and radio sharpened that instinct. On the Avalon time, he created Clem Cadiddlehopper, a slow-talking rural character whose simplicity connected with an audience tired of economic pressure. The response was immediate. Ratings rose, merchandise appeared, and his name moved into national circulation. The success confirmed that Red's ability to communicate through voice and character could scale far beyond local stages. By 1941, NBC handed him his own program. The Red Skelton Show reached around 20 million weekly listeners. To keep that pace, he wrote constantly, recycling past routines and adding new ones like Junior and Willie Lump Lump. The workload was heavy. He often performed several characters within a single 15-minute episode. The result was financial stability and national recognition, but it also established a pattern that followed him for decades. High output, little rest, and no separation between work and recovery. MGM noticed the radio momentum and signed him in 1940. His early film appearances were brief, but audiences reacted strongly to his pantomime sequences. Studios learned they could rely on him to elevate weak scripts with physical performance. By 1941, his drunk routine in Dr. Kildare's Wedding Day drew significant attention, shifting him from supporting roles to billed star. MGM invested more heavily in him, and by 1943 he led Whistling in Brooklyn, a film that earned roughly $2.5 million. Major box office returns for the period. While radio required speed, MGM demanded consistency. Red delivered on both fronts. His films used stop-motion gags and timing experiments rare for the era. These choices helped define him as a visual innovator, not just a radio personality. Yet the studio system also limited him. MGM kept him on a tight schedule and resisted his attempts to influence scripts. The tension pushed him to continue performing across multiple platforms rather than focusing on one. Television arrived just as radio's influence was shifting. On September 30th, 1951, The Red Skelton Show premiered. About 30 million viewers watched the first episode, which mixed sketches, pantomime, and live music. The new medium suited him because it combined everything he'd practiced: character voices, silent routines, and physical comedy. Within a year, he won 2 Emmys. As television matured, so did his characters. Freddie the Freeloader, introduced in 1952, reflected his silent performance background. The character required minimal dialogue and relied on expression, small gestures, and timing. Audiences connected with it quickly. Ratings grew and studio confidence increased. Throughout these transitions, from radio to film to television, the public saw a dependable entertainer who adjusted to every medium. Privately, the pace was difficult to maintain, but he continued working because the platforms kept expanding, and each new opportunity increased both his income and his national presence. Every step of this rise was shaped by the same pattern: Red using performance skills learned in childhood labor to secure stability in an industry that rarely offered it. The crises. Red Skelton's rise created opportunities, but it also brought pressure that he often carried alone. The pace accelerated after his radio success in the late 1930s. He wrote most of his material himself, revised constantly, and recorded multiple characters each week. By 1943, the workload caught up with him. During a live broadcast, he collapsed from exhaustion. Doctors told him to stop performing for a period of rest. When he returned, his comedy grew sharper and more layered, shaped by the strain he had pushed through. His personal life also began showing signs of instability. His marriage to Edna Stillwell, once a productive creative partnership, broke apart in 1943. They formally divorced in 1944. The separation disrupted the work rhythm they had built together. He remarried, but the loss of Edna's writing and management changed the foundation of his career. His second marriage brought brief stability, yet their home life carried tensions that the public did not see. Money became another source of pressure. Skelton earned large radio salaries and MGM paychecks, but he developed a gambling habit. During one trip to Las Vegas in the mid-1940s, he lost roughly $50,000 in a single night. The loss cut deeply into his savings and forced him to take more work to rebuild his finances. It created a cycle of earning and losing that followed him for years. The largest crisis arrived with his son Richard's illness. In 1957, the boy was diagnosed with leukemia. Skelton continued working, but his attention was divided between hospital visits and studio responsibilities. He kept the diagnosis private while filming projects. Richard died in 1958 at age 9. Afterward, Skelton withdrew from interviews and social appearances. He canceled shows and allowed guest hosts to fill in. The grief changed his outlook and softened the tone of some later routines. His marriage also entered a difficult period. Conflict with his wife, Georgia, grew during these years. By the early 1960s, their relationship was strained. In 1961, after a series of personal setbacks, including his son's death, Skelton attempted suicide with sleeping pills. He survived after medical intervention. The incident marked a turning point in how he engaged with his work and his audience. Professional instability followed. In 1951, he had already been suspended by MGM for rejecting a role he believed didn't fit his abilities. Later, in the 1960s, CBS began questioning whether his style fit shifting television tastes. His show still drew strong numbers, but executives pushed for younger programming. Skelton resisted changes in format, and tension with the network slowly increased. Financial trouble returned in 1973 when the IRS determined he owed $1.2 million in back taxes. Mismanagement and risky investments contributed to the debt. At age 60, he was forced to sell his Palm Springs property and return to steady touring. Casino performances helped him recover financially, but the debt reshaped his later career choices. Health issues also emerged. Years of smoking damaged his lungs. Alcohol became a problem during periods of stress. In 1981, he collapsed backstage in Las Vegas and was hospitalized. The incident made him reevaluate how much he could physically handle. Each crisis created a shift. Exhaustion led him to adjust his work habits. Financial losses pushed him toward more live performances. Grief influenced the tone of his characters, and network pressure forced him to rethink television altogether. The events did not end his career, but they altered the course of it in lasting ways. Reinvention. By the early 1970s, Red Skelton no longer held a weekly television platform, and the loss of that routine forced him to restructure his career. In 1973, the IRS informed him that he owed approximately $1.2 million in back taxes. The combination of past investment losses and inconsistent financial oversight left him with limited options, and the most direct solution was to return to live performance. As a result, he began touring casinos and theaters across the country, rebuilding income through the skills he had developed decades earlier. The continued demand for his shows encouraged NBC to offer him several specials under the title Funny Faces in 1976. These programs relied on characters he had shaped, hence the 1930s, and the familiarity helped them sell well in syndication. The earnings eased his financial obligations, but they also showed that there was still an audience interested in his work, even without a regular television series. That same year, his wife, Georgia Davis, died of cancer. Her death removed one of the few stabilizing forces in his personal life. Skelton shifted his focus toward painting, producing hundreds of oil portraits, many of them depictions of his classic pantomime figures. The consistency of painting provided a routine he could control. Exhibits in Las Vegas in 1980 demonstrated both public interest and his need for an outlet separate from performance. The sales gave him financial breathing room after years of instability. Periods of relapse followed. In 1981, while performing at the Riviera Hotel in Las Vegas, Skelton collapsed backstage. Friends later described it as a moment brought on by exhaustion and heavy drinking. Medical care stabilized him, but the event underlined the physical cost of decades of work. Still, he returned to the stage later that year for Freddie the Freeloader's Christmas dinner. an HBO special that reached roughly 5 million viewers. Its modest $200,000 budget contrasted with the simplicity of its format, which relied mostly on pantomime and the emotional familiarity audiences had with the character. Skelton continued performing through the early 1980s. A 1982 special with French mime Marcel Marceau highlighted his comfort with silence and physical expression, abilities he had practiced since childhood. Later that year, vandals damaged his son Richard's grave. Skelton did not speak publicly about the incident, but those close to him said it contributed to a period of inwardness. He completed Funny Faces 3 in 1983 and revealed that he had served abroad entertaining troops during World War II, information he had kept private for almost 40 years. The disclosure changed how many viewers understood his wartime contributions. In 1984, HBO broadcast his Royal Command performance at the Royal Albert Hall, recorded on his 70th birthday. The event reaffirmed that his style, which relied more on rhythm and expression than language, still connected with large audiences. Afterward, he shifted more of his energy to painting. Over time, he produced tens of thousands of pieces, many sold privately or donated to children's hospitals. Art became his primary outlet as his health declined. He stepped away from public performance after a car accident in 1986 left him with serious injuries, including broken ribs and fractures. Rehabilitation took months and limited his mobility. By 1990, doctors diagnosed him with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, the result of decades of smoking. He stopped performing and lived mostly privately, painting until his death on September 17, 1997. In his final years, the pattern was consistent. When performance was not possible, he created. When creating was difficult, he preserved what he had already made. His later life reflected a steady narrowing of public activity, but a continued effort to leave behind tangible work that outlived him. Legacy in 2024, Tubi release. By the time Red Skelton reached his final years, his reputation had settled into two parallel identities. One belonged to the public, a familiar television figure whose characters had defined mid-century American comedy. The other belonged to the archive that slowly surfaced after his death. Private footage, censored sketches, military recordings, and hundreds of paintings produced during periods of grief and withdrawal. These two versions did not contradict each other. They explained to each other. The rediscovery of his work began gradually. In 1989, 3 missing episodes of The Red Skelton Show surfaced from private collectors. In 1990, 16 more kinescopes were added to a commercially released Lost Episodes set. These finds shifted attention back to Skelton as a performer who had relied on timing, mime, and character work in a way few television comedians had maintained. Each release renewed interest in a period when live studio audiences shaped comedy week by week. The next major reveal came in 2013, when more than 200 hours of unaired rehearsal reels and censored sketches were found in Indiana. These included routines from the 1950s that networks had rejected for addressing race and civil rights. The material showed a writer who had experimented more than the broadcast limitations of his era allowed. It suggested that his public persona, gentle, apolitical, and family-safe, had been narrower than his actual creative range. His second legacy developed through his art. Skelton painted steadily from the 1960s onward, often during periods of personal loss. By the end of his life, he had produced more than 50,000 pieces. After 2020, some of his Freddy the Freeloader paintings sold for as much as $1 million. Museums acquired more than 1,000 works, and a dedicated gallery was built in his name. For many viewers, the paintings added context to performances that had once seemed effortless. Later, institutional releases continued this process of reframing. In early 2024, the Paley Center for Media published outtakes and bloopers from his final 1971 CBS episode. The footage showed routine mistakes, informal moments with crew, and instances in which Skelton broke character. Viewers saw a performer managing fatigue, improvisation, and the mechanics of live television. The clips circulated widely because they contradicted the polished image associated with his earlier broadcasts. The most significant shift in public understanding came in October 2024, when Tubi released Red Skelton: The Farewell Specials, Uncensored Edition. These were restored segments from his 1981 to 1982 specials, including long-form versions of Freddie the Freeloader's Christmas Dinner. Much of the material had never aired. In several monologues, Skelton spoke directly to the camera about his father's death in 1913, his son Richard's death in 1958, and the professional doubts that followed those losses. These sections were not performed in character. They resembled personal reflections recorded at the end of a long career. The restoration process revealed details audiences had not previously seen. Small facial movements, poses, and adjustments he used to communicate emotion without dialogue. Many viewers described the experience as unexpectedly intimate. More than 2 million people streamed the release during its first week, many of them unfamiliar with Skelton's work. The Tubi release did not change his legacy so much as clarify it. The public icon had been built on accessible humor, recognizable characters, and long-running television routines. The man behind that image had worked through poverty, wartime service, family loss, and industry pressure. The restored footage allowed both identities to be seen at once, giving a fuller sense of how his career developed and why his work remained relevant decades after his final broadcast.